So I ended off the last video talking about Hollywood. It just kind of fell off the tip of my tongue there. And it kind of helped me understand a little bit about what we can almost approximate about sprawling villas and uh, almost like sometimes you hear descriptions of heaven where uh, it's like, I want a palace that's, embedded with pearls and diamonds, and people who say you shouldn't eat with uh, utensils that are gold or silver because, that money is almost better uh, almost spent or kind of conserved for people who might actually need that. So it's something about extravagance. But then you kind of wonder, well, I mean, if you have the means and you've earned it and you're being charitable and you have increase as almost a consequence of that, why not enjoy what you have? And it's a good logic. And I just thought I'd spend some time offering some of the conditions that lead us to be shaded or to kind of have this sense of security with wealth and extravagance, and uh, how to maybe use it without feeling like we're guilty or having some kind of indulgence that may look like it's too luxurious. So we have an understanding that um, there's a sealed. It's a book about the prophetic Sirah, or his kind of history. It's a little bit less authentic than what his hadith narrations are. So they're just basically different renditions of how people can try to find an entryway to understanding his life. So some people understand his life from the perspective of like a historical place relative to the world. Some people want to understand the battles and like what precipitated them, what was the result of them. Uh, the Sealed Nectar is a book that kind of has a very textbook kind of approach where it might seem kind of dry, but the way I assume it can be hopefully interpreted is that I didn't read it. Actually, I bought the book and I couldn't get through it, but I just, in my mind, assumed that it could be kind of like maybe a baseline for what life can be. And then you can kind of add whatever flavor you want to it. So it's kind of to take a postmodern approach to what is it that can be like a sealed nectar. To me is almost like something that's only I have access to, and I'll be the only one that can find resonance with whatever meaning I kind of derive, and it might not even be something that's replicable. So somebody else might not find the same pleasure in reading or driving whatever meaning I have kind of arrived at. So then you understand why it's kind of like a unique endeavor, and your approximation of a revered historical figure is basically yours. And sometimes that's why people choose to kind of be careful about how they speak about people in the past, because sometimes they make them almost to be heroes, and it creates kind of like this hagiography or this kind of like mythological sort of uh, veneer as it is. And then you're just like, does this person ever actually exist? Then you can, actually go to the historical place and be like, well, it did, but then maybe there's some kind of exaggerations to what we understand life to be, because typically we find it hard to see heroes in some kind of human fashion. So it could be how, the stories of Zeus and Hercules and all these demigods kind of came to be, that we needed uh, to almost break up one persona into several different ones, that maybe one personifies just evil, one personifies just good, and then between that is a lot of varieties. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is all the different doors that could have an entry point into some kind of understanding of, I can look forward to heaven, or I can expect a reward from God and almost hope that uh, God understands that I am trying to be sincere and hopefully He'll redeem me in some way. So, delayed gratification is one, care for another, or compassionately giving some kind of thought without expectation of return of a favor. So sometimes you can think of nursing professions in this way. Like people can say, yeah, it's just their job, or teachers, that's just their job. But a lot of people go above and beyond within their professions, and that's kind of like where I guess this could kind of fall under as a category. Caring for the orphans or whoever's weak in society is another door, possibly. Reverence and contemplation of the universe. So trying to understand like deeper meanings about life. Being an equitable arbitrator. So this is like a judge, because oftentimes when we are asked to mediate between two conflicting groups, we really have to struggle to put our biases aside, and that's a very difficult task. So God almost allows for the struggle to be there because we almost have to kind of allow ourselves to go against what we might want to choose because we might be breaking bridges or, allowing us all to kind of see parts of ourselves we don't want to see. So that's highly rewarded. Inclining to different ways of understanding how to find God metaphorically is something that is revered. So this is kind of to um, understand maybe like visiting different temples or different ways of understanding and different ways of understandings that have kind of evolved through the past histories, I guess, wherever you find yourself located in geography. And then maybe building bridges so that you can find a way to approximate what the prophet used to do whenever he'd, like, there's examples of him saying that he used to enjoy wearing the different clothings of different cultures, almost to say, like, I'm attempting to bridge some kind of understanding and I hope you kind of reciprocate that. Um, and then maintaining and encouraging an air of dignity and not seeming to almost humiliate yourself or others. So in this way, it's almost like if there is something that is a question for you to do, and it's almost because there's a power struggle and you're not able to figure out, to what degree am I supposed to give in to whatever this is, uh, you can kind of think of this meaning or this saying, which is you shouldn't obey anybody at the expense of what God might ordain. And that's almost to say, if there's an oppressive king and he's got a guard and a prisoner, and the prisoner, is innocent, and the king's ordering you to torture him, you know what? Like, I would personally say, like, there's no way, like, you can hang me and hang him, and that's it. Like, we'll just die as martyrs. So in these scenarios, it's maybe not as easy as you'll die. Maybe you'll be tortured too, but it's one of those things that are highly rewarded. And so you understand why the keys to heaven are actually not as easy as we might think. Like, we're thinking like perpetual heaven. So like people who look like, they just had this lucky break in life, and I wonder why they make it look so easy. But that's just because you have like a snapshot of what their life might have been. We still don't see like the difficulties that they kind of persevere with still. And it might just be like several years of this constant struggle that allowed them to kind of arrive to where they are. And so to begrudge them their success is probably not something that's healthy. So this is something to kind of help me segue into the movie Tangled. It's kind of a funny movie because we tend to see Disney movies as depictions of wanting to remain youthful. And there's a lot of stories about, these old stepmothers or these old mothers or grandmothers or witches who tend to almost begrudge young women their beauty. And to understand that we don't necessarily have to think that way is something that could be new. Like, I don't know, there's a few constructs within Hollywood that are evolving gradually, and trying to understand maybe the perception behind it, which is we want it to prolong our lives, or almost think about these hereditary diseases or illnesses that might stunt somebody's growth or development into their senior years in a almost aware or alert state. So if we think, well, regardless of what medical advance is, if I know that, cutting my life short might create like a absence in the hearts of those who love me, that might be a sacrifice that's necessary for your own personal progress, because who knows what that might actually build for your future if those resources are maybe, I don't know, routed somewhere else. So these are really difficult questions. Again, they're moral questions that people kind of have to weigh the benefits and drawbacks with, and kind of see, like, I don't know, like, how would I think about my next life if I, sacrificed, taking medication, but I knew that in taking it, I might have a better quality of life, but maybe the medication has side effects that might actually harm, you know, maybe those around me or something like that. It's very difficult to say. I don't really know much about the different kinds of cancer treatments and radiation. I know I had taken a class, kind of like an information class, for individuals who are going through chemo. And a lot of the recommendations were, flush the toilet twice because, whoever might you be using the toilet after you, like just certain kind of, to me, they almost sounded like, wow, that's really bizarre. Like, what are we putting into our body? But then you think, like, what are these cells that are that like harsh within our body that are like just eating it alive? And so then you think, like, is it really worth it if I just think about, well, it's not that bad if like euthanasia is a thing that's maybe within reach, but I don't know like how bad this cancer is. So it's almost, if you align that with dogma, then you can kind of see how it's not necessarily spiritual sloth, but it's just they're difficult questions, and we don't know how to almost work up the willpower or the um, almost the courage to kind of break down these ideas and then see what the ramifications of doing that is, and then with all the advance that we have and all the knowledge that we have, how we would think and do with these really big questions, and then what are, if I understand what the next life might be, what will my future kind of life maybe look like?